On Tuesday, Microsoft walked on stage in San Francisco and did something it hasn't done in the last decade. It stopped depending on OpenAI. It finally released and shipped its own coding AI built in-house, trained without OpenAI, and it's rolling out free inside GitHub Copilot to every tier right now. The headline number is it solves harder coding problems with up to 60% fewer tokens and beats the Claude Haiku 4.5 across every coding benchmark. The fact that it's free and it's giving and performing so well is a very good place to start. Now, I've got a problem with that claim, and I'll get to that. But the biggest story isn't the model, it's what this means for the two biggest names in AI and for the money that you spend on AI tools. This is the day that Microsoft and OpenAI started looking more like competitors than partners. And let me break down why this matters if you run a business, pay for AI tools, and not a developer. For years, almost every serious AI feature Microsoft shipped had OpenAI somewhere underneath it. You are indirectly paying for OpenAI tax. Every token your team burned on in Copilot, a slice followed through to OpenAI. I have tried using the Microsoft Copilot and it wasn't that phenomenal. I've just never gotten that great of an output from it. I guess the main target market for Microsoft has always been enterprise. And Claude is starting to take a chunk out of that market. What Microsoft announced is that this is the first real product that they're building within their own engine. Cheaper to run on their own cloud, no OpenAI in the loop. So when the company that controls your tools changes its supply chain, your costs eventually move too. So let's get into what they actually shipped. They've got two main models. They've got the MAI Code 1 Flash. This is the model that is tailor-made for GitHub and VS Code and the Microsoft stack in general with 5 billion parameters. It's comparable to Haiku, but cheaper. It's cheap and it's a free model. The MAI Thinking, which is the flagship model that Microsoft is releasing and is preferred to be closer to Sonnet 4.6. Given that Code 1 Flash is cheaper, I will tend to assume that the flagship will also be significantly cheaper. I would not be surprised if there was some level of questioning about how Microsoft has been training their AI, because I tend to believe they would have been training their AI through OpenAI's data sets. But it would be interesting to see the MAI Code 1 Flash. It's a small coding model, around 5 billion parameters. The clever detail is that it's trained inside GitHub Copilot, and it's an actual production harness, not benchmarked in a lab and then dropped in. It's trained where it lives, which would be a huge advantage. It's rolling out in VS Code and in the Copilot picker. The default auto picker across every tier is going to be the free, the Pro Plus, and the Max. Let's think about this for a second. A frontier company coding model on the free tier, that's a pricing move as much as a product move. I really hope they don't deploy the same strategy that Gemini did deploy, where it starts off as a free tier, they attract you to their models, and then once they attract you to your models, they bump up the token usage. Because I do understand that at the end of the day, this energy has to be paid for, and the best way to cover these costs is to push it to the consumer. The second model is the MAI Thinking 1, signals the real ambition. Microsoft's first in-house reasoning model, 35 billion active parameter around 1 trillion in total and 256,000 token context window. And that line really matters because Microsoft says it was trained without OpenAI data. The private preview, you can test it out on the Microsoft Foundry. And that phrase, without OpenAI data, isn't an engineering footnote. It's a message. They're training their own models. Their own models come with their own data sets. And we will be curious to see what output we are going to be getting, what level of product we're going to be getting. Let's look at the benchmarks. So the MAI code 1 Flash outperforms Claude Haiku 4.5 across all coding benchmarks tested, with higher pass rates on all 4 evaluation, including a plus 16 lead on the diverse real-world tasks of SWE Bench Pro at 51.2% versus 35.2%. It's not just smarter, it's leaner, solving harder problems with up to 60% fewer tokens on SWE Bench Verified, proving that high accuracy and greater efficiency are no longer a trade-off. The SWE benchmarks on the MAI Code 1 Flash, which is the free model, and the Haiku 4.5, which is still a model that Claude offers, obviously would not be as powerful as the Sonnet 4.6 or Opus 4.6. However, it is still very good for performing coding tasks. Given that the MAI Code 1 Flash is free, you're going to be getting a very efficient and powerful model for 60% less costs. If we look at all the other benches, all the other benchmarks such as math science and structural following and agentic coding tasks, the MAI Code Flash does have better results. Across the board, it does seem like the MAI Code 1 Flash is a better model in comparison to the Haiku 4.5. Currently, it's free. Hopefully it stays that way, because if it stays that way, it makes having a good coding model accessible to pretty much anyone. The MAI Thinking is the one with 35 billion active parameters, 1 trillion total parameters, is meant to be competitive with Opus 4.6 on the SWE Benchmark Pro. This would be in the paid tier. And given that they're training their own model, and you can only imagine the amount of data they would be having in GitHub, it would only be a matter of time before it is also a competitive model. I would be curious. I would be testing this myself just to see what I can get out of it. Microsoft says that it matches the 4.6 on coding and in blind human evaluations. Ideally, people preferred it over Claude Sonnet 4.6. If we're looking at all the benchmark results, it does rank in the top upper echelon of these models. Other than the Terminal Bench Pro, which understandably, the Kimike 2.6, DeepSeek V4, Opus 4.6 are significantly outpacing it. I am a massive proponent of this, because if they want to compete with these Chinese models, such as Kimike 2.6, DeepSeek V4, cheaper models are needed. And cheaper, good models are unnegotiable at this point. If they want to hold space and they will also want to be competitive, these models do need to get cheaper. I do understand that the energy cost must be paid at some point somewhere, although the Chinese models are doing phenomenal work at a fraction of the price. Such as DeepSeek V4 is 21 times cheaper than the Opus 4.7 and 4.8. That's a massive price gap. The performance of the 4.8 is outstanding. However, for a lot of people, I think it gets to a point where the cost versus the actual product is a factor. Here's the part that the benchmark headlines bury. Back in April, Microsoft and OpenAI quietly renegotiated. They capped revenue share payments at $38 billion, down from a number reported as high as $135 billion. OpenAI can now sell through Amazon, Google, Oracle, and critically, Microsoft stopped paying OpenAI a rev share of the Azure sales. If we're looking at that timeline, April, the payment plumbing changes. June, the product proof ships. In-house models trained without OpenAI on Microsoft's own cloud, free inside their flagship developer tool. It's not a coincidence. It's Microsoft's strategy, and cap off my hat to them, because having a code base such as GitHub, where a massive amount of developers, programmers utilize on a daily basis, is a invaluable tool. Ideally, what Microsoft reflected is they no longer need OpenAI anymore. And for once, from a place of pure transparency, I tend to believe, due to every benchmark on this launch being produced by Microsoft, the general public has to test them out themselves and see what the output is, and see if they actually do think that it's a better model. They built the model, they chose the tests, they ran them, they published the results. As for now, zero independent verification. We've seen this happen a few times now. Every lab ships a launch where the model beats everyone, and then 3 weeks later, the independent evaluation tell quieter story. Microsoft isn't exempt because the logo is bigger. So if you're a small dev shop already inside Copilot, you can try MAI Code 1 Flash. It's free, it's in your picker, and the downside is a few minutes. But don't rip out a working setup based on a vendor's own benchmark. I don't think anyone does that anyway. Test it on your own code, run your own tests, run your own benchmarks, and figure out if this is an actual model that is good for you. I am still skeptical. I do tend to think that Microsoft is playing it smart and slightly cutthroat, building off the ramp of OpenAI in public, good business, but clean, appropriately licensed data. Until someone outside Microsoft confirms it, treat them as claims, not facts. So here's a question I genuinely am asking at the moment. If a free in-house model is a cheaper model and almost as good as the paid frontier models, do you save the money and accept almost, or almost is exactly where the hidden cost is? The missed bug, the worst refractor, cheaper and good enough versus best and expensive. There's no clean answer right now, and the company telling you it's good enough profits when you believe it. The more users, the more that you use it, they'll just end up pushing you into a higher tier. Cost is a massive thing, and these frontier models are getting quite expensive. OpenAI's limits are quite generous right now. Claude has upped their limits. Prior to that, they were very expensive and constricting, whereas you wouldn't be able to get a lot of work done or as much work as you'd like. And Gemini, my experience with it right now is token usage has made it so difficult for me to use that I just no longer use it anymore. Even though I have a subscription with the Google ecosystem, it is just not conducive, or it's just not worth it for me to use because the token limits are hit so quickly. In fact, I might even move to VS Code. Anyway, that's a side rant. Do like, subscribe, and join our Skool.com. We share a bunch of tools, a bunch of workflows, and to stay ahead of the AI game. I will see you guys in the next video.